It's my name is Sean Adler, and I'm a teacher here in New Jersey, which is very close to New York in America. And right now it is 8 o'clock in the morning, my time, and I am so very happy to be with you today and to be sharing this moment together. It makes me feel just so wonderful to see all of you and to be able to talk to each of you. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
My name is Rutika. I am an 8th grader from Z.P.H School, Ilavaram. I am so privileged to interact with you. Namaste from India. Congratulations, sir, on becoming Global Teacher Prize finalist. Advance Happy Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. I would like to share a little information. What an incredible achievement. You chose a new path of teaching from your previous job of journalism. Both are completely contrast jobs. I would like to take it an opportunity to ask you a question. My question is, how was your journey as an MTV news journalist?
Well, that's an amazing, wonderful question. Thank you so much. And happy Christmas to you and happy New Year to you as well. And thank you so much for asking that question. I, like a lot of teachers in America, was not a teacher from the time I was very young. I came into education in the middle of my life. I was not always a teacher. And my first job, my first career was as a journalist. And now you said that you thought those jobs were not very similar, but I disagree. I think those jobs have a lot of overlap in the sense that both are about telling stories. Both of the jobs that I had as a journalist and as a teacher are about making connections with people. When I worked at MTV, one of the things I would do is I would interview people and I would try to learn about them sort of very quickly in a very similar way to what we're doing now. And I think that forming those connections and having those very fast relationships served me when I became a teacher, because as a teacher, of course, you're always interacting with people and you're always communicating with them in ways that I think as a teacher, we always want to make it feel like the person we're talking to is the most important person and that they're the most important person to us in that moment, and they have our full and undivided attention. And as an interviewer, of course, you're doing that all the time. So I think those skills were very translatable. I loved being a writer. And for those of you who are in school now thinking about maybe becoming a teacher, I think that having skills outside of education is very important, because I'm able to bring those skills to my students and bring those skills to my classroom. And it's not just that I've always been a teacher. I have these other real world skills that I can apply. But I loved being a writer.
Good morning. This is Har Krishna, an educator from Z.P.H.S School, Ilavaram. Congratulations, sir, on becoming Global Teachers Prize finalist. I am so pleased to be with you today. Now I would like to share a little information. An ordinary teacher tells, a good teacher explains, but an excellent teacher demonstrates and inspires. You are a truly inspiring educator. Now I would like to ask you a question. My question is, please share your another incredible work, The Helpers.
So The Helpers was the second collection of student memoirs that we wrote together with students from all across the Northeast of America. One of the innovations that I sort of worked on over the last couple of years as a teacher was in helping my students to write their experiences, to write their stories, and to get those stories published into books that we would then sell on the internet, and then get the money and give the money to the students. The first collection of books that we wrote was a collection of books centered around their experiences during the COVID-19 pandemic. And that book was called The Class of COVID-19. We wrote that book at my old school, and it was centered on just a few students that I personally taught that were in my classroom. After we did that, the college that I work for, the Ramapo College of New Jersey, which is a college here in the Northeast near New York, they wrote to me and they asked me if we could do that again, if we could sort of encourage students to tell their stories in another collection of student memoirs. And at that time, we were past the COVID-19 pandemic. We were sort of out of the woods, and we really didn't want to revisit that any longer. And so we came up with this idea of doing a book about helpers, about people who have helped our students, about people who have reached out to kids when kids were struggling, when kids were in need, when kids were afraid. I think all of us have had those moments in our lives when we're afraid, when we're not sure of ourselves, when we feel like we can't be our best. And so we wanted to tell the stories of what happens in those moments, what happens when you need help, and what happens when you ask for help, and who is it that comes and helps you. And so in my country, we have when I was growing up, there was a TV show. I don't know if it's in India. It was a TV show called Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And Mr. Rogers would go on TV and he would say, when there was a crisis, always look for the helpers. Anytime that you see somebody in a natural disaster or in an emergency, you can always see the helpers, the people that aren't running away from the fight, but they're running towards the fire, or they're running towards the emergency. And so that's where we got the title from. We got the title from that quote from Mr. Rogers, the idea of who are the people that run towards our students, who are the people that help our kids. And so we reached out all across the state, and we got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stories that came in, and we published 61 of them. So 60 of those kids got to be published authors, and we put them in a book, and the book was called The Helper. That was a great question. I'm sorry if I went into too much detail.
No, no, no. Actually, you have given a comprehensive analysis about your work.
Hello.
This is Nandakishore, an 8th grade student from Z.P.H.S Ilavaram. Now, would like to share little information. First of all, congratulations, sir, on becoming Global Teacher Prize finalist. To do anything successfully, we should be mentally healthy and physically fit. Students need to be mentally and physically fit. In this context, now I would like to ask a question. Here is my question. What kind of mental health issues do students of the U.S.A experience?
I loved that question. That was a really wonderful question. And I think you're right. I think in order to learn, students have to be physically and mentally safe. They have to feel like they can learn because their basic needs are met. There's a psychologist that talks about a hierarchy of needs. He has a pyramid, and he says, before you can learn, which is the very top level, you have to have all of your other needs met. You have to be safe. You have to be fed. It's very hard to learn when you're hungry. It's very hard to learn when you are afraid. And I think mental health is a big part of that. And so your question is a very good question, because we have to make sure that our students are mentally fit, as you say. And so in America, like other places around the world, we struggle with what we call needs insecurities, where I teach a lot of my students don't have the resources that others have. And so sometimes they have to go without. Mentally, we struggle with a lot of anxiety. Our students have issues of nervousness and anxiety, and it's exacerbated. I think it becomes even worse because of this here, which is the phone, and of the culture that the phone promotes. Now, I don't know in India how many students have access to the internet and to the phones, but I think it becomes a very toxic loop where kids, they search for validation on the internet, and they search for those likes and those followers and those subscribers, and it eventually becomes a sort of addiction. And I think that addiction leads to anxiety. But even without that, we do have a lot of nervousness and a lot of anxiety here in America. Good morning.
Namaste from India. Advance happy, very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. My name is Gayatri, an 8th grader from Z.P.H.S High School, Ilavaram. Congratulations, sir, for being Global Teacher Prize finalist. I'm so jubilant to interact with you. In our school system, an English teacher doesn't teach psychology. A psychology teacher doesn't teach English.
but your case is different. I have a question. My question is English and psychology taught to students as part of your curriculum?
So first of all, I love that word, jubilant. That was a wonderful word. I'm very jubilant to talk to you too. I think that's such a great word. In America, no, English is taught as part of the curriculum. So English, writing, composition, literature, all of those facets that go into making an English education, all of those are part of the curriculum. They are required for graduation. So in America, you have to take English education every year that you're in school, starting when you're in elementary school and going all the way up into secondary school, high school. Psychology is what they call an elective. So it's not required for graduation. It's something kids can take if they are interested in it, but they don't have to take it. It's not part of the required curriculum. So this year, I teach what's called advanced placement psychology, or AP psychology, which is a college level course, but it's taught in the high school. So the students that do take it, at the end of the year, they can take a giant test, and they can get college or university credits for that class. So it's not required because it's at a higher level than the rest of their high school education. But it is a lot of fun, and it is something that that a lot of kids really enjoy, and a lot of kids want to take because it's that high level class. Good morning.
Advance happy Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. My name is Madavi. I am an 8th grader from Z.P.H.S Ilavaram. First of all, congratulations, sir, on becoming a Global Teacher Prize finalist. I would like to share a little information. A great educator always shows his mark in teaching. He not only inspires his students but also his teaching fraternity. In this context, now I would like to ask you a question. Here my question is, how different is your teaching from others?
That's a great question. And it really makes me reflect on not only my own teaching, but on the teaching of my colleagues and the teaching of my coworkers. You know, I feel sometimes like I don't belong. Do you have that? It's called imposter syndrome. Do you know, when I was nominated for the Global Teacher Prize, and I went to Paris and I met all of these other teachers, one of the things I said over and over again was, why, how can I be here? You know, why am I part of this? Because we always undervalue the things that we do,
Yes.
and we overrate the things that other people do. But having said that, I want to tell you that my colleagues and my coworkers are brilliant and amazing, and they work with students in ways that I am learning from every day and that I am envious of every day. People that I work with and that I share this experience with are so good at their job, and they do things in ways that I always look at and say, "Oh, I'd like to do that too. I'd like to add that to my toolbox, like a carpenter who adds a tool to their toolbox." So all of that is a long way of saying that I'm not so sure that I am very different than other people in terms of craft or in terms of technique. You know, one of the things that I focus on that is different is narrative writing, is storytelling. In English education, particularly in America, a lot of what we do is called expository writing, which is explaining certain, if you're, like, for instance, let's say you're having an essay in class, you're explaining a book or you're explaining an argument. We do persuasive writing, we do compare and contrast writing. These are all different types of writing, but one of the ways that I'm different is I focus on narrative writing or storytelling. And so we write a lot of stories about ourselves in our class. And of course, that's where we get these book projects from. And sort of what brought me to Paris in the first place was these narrative stories. So I do think that's one way that I'm different from other English educators.
2 Americans have been shortlisted for this prestigious Global Teacher Prize finalists. So when the people or maybe colleagues or maybe your students, and when they heard for the first time that you have been among the top 50 finalists, so what was the first reaction coming from your colleagues or the students
Yeah.
or maybe neighbors or the media?
Yeah. So there were two other Americans in Paris. There was Melissa Tracy, who was from Delaware, and there was Lacey Hoosier, who was from Louisiana, and both of them were also in Paris. Of course, I was the only English teacher. They were both science teachers, and so it was a really wonderful opportunity to meet both of them and to shake their hands and to take photos. But the reaction was it was overwhelming because in my country the Global Teacher Prize is advertised as the Nobel Prize for teaching.
Yes.
Yeah, and so when the newspaper does an article, it says Nobel teacher Sean Adler, Nobel finalist. And so, of course, to be a finalist for the Nobel Prize, like it's overwhelming. It becomes I like that word, that jubilant, because your whole body is glowing. It becomes a sort of a feeling that you're on air, you're floating on air. But it was a wonderful experience, and I have to say, all of my coworkers and all of the students were very supportive. They made posts on social media and they shared on Instagram, and they wanted to tell their friends, and the district where I teach is a very big district. So I live and I teach in a major city in America. We have about 300,000 people. So it's not as big as New York or Los Angeles, but it's a fairly big sized city. And it just felt like everyone in the city was celebrating this, which was a tremendous and unexpected feeling. It really was a celebration. I really didn't feel like I deserved it.
Yes.
Hello, sir. Good morning.
Hello. Good morning.
How are you, sir?
Oh, I feel jubilant. How are you?
I'm fine, sir. Thank you, sir. Advance Happy Christmas sir, and a Happy New Year, sir. My name is Mamata. I'm a 7th grader. I'm from Z.P.H.S School, Ilavaram. First of all, congratulations, sir, on becoming Global Teacher Prize finalist. I would like to share some information, sir. Today's technology has brought the different parts of world closer through its fast means of communication. Here, I would like to ask you a question, sir. My question is, in this technology era, what is most crucial for students to become global citizens?
That's a great question. I think you're absolutely right. I think that it is more important now than ever to become global citizens because the world is so much smaller than it ever used to be. Even when I was a boy, the world felt so much bigger than it is now. Now we are able to do things on the internet. We're able to do things virtually that I could never dream of doing when I was a kid. This is all brand new and all wonderful, and it really underscores how important it is to talk to each other, to listen to each other, and to take part in activities like this. So, again, thank you for inviting me, because this is helping me become a better global citizen, and this is helping me expand my horizons. I think ultimately, the truth about what students need to do is in there, and that is to listen to each other and to listen to the stories of other people. It's one of the things that in our book series we talk about when we have the students write the narratives, which is that people will listen if you put yourself out there. People will listen if you make them. We say all the time that you have to be the hero of your own story. Sometimes we read stories and we think that we're the sidekick, or that our life is about somebody else, or our life is somebody else's story, and we're just a part of somebody else's story. And I try to tell my students all the time that we have to take ownership of our choices. We have to take ownership of our actions, because when you make choices, those are what change us. Those choices become who we are. And just as it's true for us, it's also true for everyone else. And therefore, it is incumbent upon us, and it is necessary for us to be active listeners as well as active sharers. And so I hope that, as a global citizen, my students are not only making themselves the heroes of their own stories, but then of course listening to and appreciating the stories of others. That's what we're doing next. That's the book that we're doing next. We're doing a book on immigration and stories of other cultures. And now this book is just limited to our city, our school, because we have so many students from all over the world. We have students from every country almost on earth that have come. Their families have come to America, and now they're students of ours. So we're expanding our global horizon, and we're inviting stories about those experiences. And I think that's so necessary and so important now more than ever to listen to each other.
Yeah, thank you. Akash.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Hello, sir. This is Akash Kumar, a 9th grader from Z.P.H.S Ilavaram. First of all, congratulations, sir, on becoming Global Teacher Prize finalist.
Thank you.
Now, I would like to share little information. Learning can be accelerated if the relationship between teacher and student is quite cordial and friendly. As a student, I would like my teacher to be my friend. Here, I would like to ask you a question. My question is, do you treat your student as a friend or just to students? What is the ideal approach to deal with the students?
That's a great question. Thank you so much for that question. I do not treat my students as friends. My students are not my friends. I am friendly with my students. In other words, I like to approach my students with respect, with compassion, and with authenticity. What does that mean? That means I always want to tell my students the truth. I think it's important that you tell everyone the truth. Sometimes when you tell people the truth, they don't like you very much, and you lose them for a day. But when you lie to someone, you lose them forever. They never come back to you, and they never want to learn from you again. And so sometimes that means you have to tell them things that they don't want to hear. But I'm not friends with my students. I don't hang out with them after school. We don't have lunch together. We don't enjoy activities or hobbies. We don't play golf. We don't go to the movies together. These are activities that I do with my friends. I go to dinner with my friends, and I laugh with my friends after school and after work, and we have adult conversations. I don't have that sort of relationship with my kids. I think that what you're talking about, though, is something that I aspire to. So maybe the discussion here is more semantic. In other words, maybe the discussion is simply about what words we use to describe the same sort of relationship that we have. But to me, that word friend, I wouldn't say I'm a friend, because to me, that word friend is very special. That's somebody that I'm very intimate with. To me, a friend is an intimate relationship where you share a lot of personal details. And so that word is a word that I don't use to describe my friends or to describe my students.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello.
How are you, sir?
Very good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm fine, sir. Thank you, sir. First of all, congratulations on becoming Global Teacher Prize finalist. This is Subramanya Srinivas, 8th grade student from Z.P.H.S School, Ilavaram. I would like to share you some information. As a student, I love to learn easily and quickly if it taught innovatively. In this context, I am keen to ask you this question. My question is, what are your innovative activities as an English and psychology teacher?
That's a great question. I think when I think I had said earlier that sometimes I feel like I'm an imposter. Like sometimes I have this feeling that I don't belong in the company of your great teacher who does all of these amazing activities. And the reason is because I don't always know that I'm innovative, right? I'm not creating new things and doing things that are different than everybody else. How could I belong when I'm not inventing all of these new techniques and all of these new things? But I do think that as I said, something that I do that I think is innovative is the focus that I have on narrative writing, on storytelling, on memoir, on allowing my students the opportunity to tell their stories and to share their stories. I do believe very strongly in the invitation to become. What does that mean to me? That means that I don't want my students simply to do exercises. I don't want my students simply to do things for the sake of doing them, just to keep busy. I want them to have real opportunities like I had when I was a journalist, and real opportunities like I had when I was a writer. So for me, I like to invite them to become the thing that we're teaching, to become real authors, not just write a story in school, but to publish your book and to go and do interviews for your book and to edit your book and to do the things that a real author would do. In the same way that we're in psychology, I want them to become real research psychologists, even if only for a day, even if only for a moment, to be able to do real research and to be able to see what real research is. That to me is very important, and I call that an invitation to become. So I do think that perhaps in some way that might be a little different or a little innovative. But I don't know. Maybe that's something you know. What would you like to become? I think that's important. What would you like to become? Do that thing, but really do it. Don't just learn about it, really do it.
Thank you. Teacher as well as psychology teacher. So what are the topics that you teach, especially in the area of English language? So when it comes to me as an English teacher, English is a third language here in India. So I teach it as a third language. And we have a few lessons where I have to deal with some grammar, vocabulary, and some lessons. And most of our English is based on reading, writing, and as well as listening, but not much stress on speaking. So that's how the curriculum is framed here in India. But recently, the government has taken some initiatives to improve the students' speaking skills, and it has recently introduced TOEFL Junior in all the schools, in especially public schools. So, how about the system prevailing in your state, especially in New Jersey, in the area of English subject?
So obviously the way that we teach English is very different than the way you teach English, because you teach English as a third language, as a foreign language. And so, we're not teaching it as a foreign language, we're teaching it as a primary language. In America, students are not required to take foreign language. In my school, in my high school, they have to take 2 years, 2 years of Spanish or Portuguese or French. But many students, they leave high school and they only speak the one language. They only speak English. And it is a real shame in my country that we do not have a more trilingual or even bilingual approach. I think that the learning of language really broadens our mind and really makes us, we talked earlier about being global citizens and about listening to each other. And it's very difficult to listen to each other if you can't understand each other. And I think it's a great shame in America that we don't do a better job of teaching multiple languages. So I give you great honor and great credit for the way that you do to do that. And all of your students, by the way, are phenomenal English speakers. They're all wonderful. I understood everything. And I think they should be very, very proud of themselves. So I just want to say that you do a wonderful, wonderful job.
Thank you.
In America, yeah. In America, we primarily teach writing and reading. So primarily English education is focused around writing and reading, not so much speaking, and very little listening. We do a lot of writing and reading, which is obviously very different than when you learn it as a foreign language and you're more interested in the verbal communication. We take for granted that all of our students are able to speak the language.
Yeah. And actually, I have been to USA as a part of Fulbright exchange program in the year 2022. and I happened to visit one of the middle schools located in somewhere in Arkansas state. So I came to know a few facts that I observed one English teacher teaching for almost 1 week time. So what I came to know that her lessons based on practicality rather than the theoretical part. What we learn in this part of India, I teach a lesson and mechanically the student listen to it, and so there are a few questions that they need to answer, and there are some exercises they need to fill out based on the lesson. But what I observed in the lesson that I witnessed a long time ago when I was in U.S.A, that she involved the students in a discussion where the students took the active part. So that's quite interesting for me, and so I even shared that lesson that I learned with my colleagues after coming back to India. So I like that approach that teacher took. And could you please tell us about the practical approach that most of the English teachers, especially, they adopt while teaching English?
Yeah, you mentioned, and you're quite right, by the way. You talk about the idea of active learning
Mm.
versus passive learning. And
Yeah.
in America, we have a very strong focus on that active learning. And the idea is that students learn best when they learn how to do it on their own. For instance, I've read Shakespeare, I've read Macbeth, I've read Hamlet. I know what Macbeth means. I understand what the words in Hamlet mean. I could very simply tell my students this meaning. I could say to them, this is what this line means, and the students could take notes, and then they could regurgitate that information back, or they could share that information back. They could memorize that information. But would they be able then to go out and read King Lear or read Romeo and Juliet or read a different Shakespeare book on their own? In other words, do they have the skills that are necessary to do the work on their own? And in America, we come down on the side of thinking that no, they wouldn't be able to do that without that active practice. So one of the things that we do a lot is we struggle in class. A lot of my students, will tackle poetry or tackle reading and come away without knowing the answer. They'll come away, without really having grasped the meaning. But the idea isn't to understand one poem. The idea is to understand all of the poems. And so it is hoped, and we believe, that the more active practice they have, the more that they'll be ready to tackle the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And so you're absolutely right, and you've hit the nail on the head. In America, it's very centered around this idea of struggle and active work of the students. And so I do very little of the analysis. I set them up in a situation, and I say, go off and sort of learn on your own. And then I'm there as a monitor, and I'm there as a sounding board, and I'm there to guide them. I'm there to help them, but I'm not there to give them the answers. That would be cheating.
Yeah. Have any ambition in lifetime? Yes, I have to do something in future. I have to achieve something. So do you have any targets in mind? Do you have anything in your mind from here onwards? You have already become a famous personality in region and the world.
I, I sort of skipped a step. So in my country, we have the national teachers of the year and the state teachers of the year, and of course the global teacher prize, which is the global teachers of the year. Somewhere in my life, I'd love to win the state teacher of the year and the national teacher of the year. I don't know how likely that is, but that would be something that I would love to shoot for someday. But I feel so privileged and lucky to be part of this global community now. And I tell all of my coworkers at work that everybody should have the right and everybody should have the opportunity to feel like I feel. Do you feel that way too? Like when you got the Global Teacher Prize, and you just feel this amazing love and this amazing energy. And don't you want other people to feel that way?
Definitely. We
Yeah.
we request others also make use of this opportunity maybe in the future, so that
Right.
they become and part of our community.
So yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, please.
Hello, sir. I am Saina Agastri,
Hello.
a ninth grader from Z.P.H School, Ilavaram. Firstly, congratulations, sir, on becoming Global Teacher Prize finalist. Now, I would like to tell some information. COVID-19 has shaken the world by inflicting heavy human loss. It has also taught us many lessons. But many inspiring educators have served their students even in this pandemic. Now, I would like to take it an opportunity to ask you a question. My question is, could you please share your amazing work, the class of COVID-19?
So thank you so much for asking that question, and thank you so much for keeping trying and for not giving up and for signing back in. Yeah, the class of COVID-19 was our first book, and it was a project, as you say, it was based around the pandemic and focused on the stories of grief and loss and human death in the wake of what was a international moment of grief and sadness. Do you know I live very close to an old retirement home? Well, maybe I shouldn't tell this story here. Maybe this is inappropriate. I shouldn't share the story, but it was a period of heavy loss and as you say, heavy human loss. And my motto here has always been, it's right here behind me on the wall. This is a quote here from a book called The Plague or La Peste by Albert Camus. If you know Albert Camus, he was from Algeria, and he wrote a book about a plague. And he says this, he says, he should not be one who holds their peace, but bears witness in favor of those plague-stricken people, so that some memorial of the injustice and the outrage done to them might endure, and to state quite simply what we learn in times of pestilence, that there are more things to admire in men than to despise. I love that quote, and I live by that quote. The idea that when injustice is done in the world and when people are hurting, it is our job as teachers, but also our job as human beings to observe that and to celebrate the resilience and the strength inside that allows us to overcome. And so that was the idea of the book, and that was the idea of the whole series, The Class of COVID-19. My message is the story goes on and on and on. You know, we say things all the time, like we say goodbye and we say farewell, and we say that we want our final message, but there is no final message because now we are family and we are in this top 50 together.
Yeah.
And we will communicate all of these years moving forward. And so it is not goodbye, it is see you later. But my message to all of your students is the same message I give to my students, which is, remember, you are the hero of your own story, and you are the main character in your own life. And it is important that you are not complacent, and you are not, in America, we have an author who says the mass of men live lives of quiet desperation. And what does that mean? That means most people yearn for something bigger. They want meaning in their life. They want to have ambition and they want to achieve, but they're afraid. You see, and they are quiet and they live lives on the inside, and they're desperate because their lives on the inside do not match the lives that they want. And so I tell all my students to not be afraid and to be the main character, to be the hero in their own life. And so that would be what I would say